Imagine a situation where you become captive to a demon in a parallel world of nightmares. What if this happens right in your own home? Now your dwelling no longer represents safety but becomes a place filled with fear. You must fight for your survival. You've probably never counted how many steps are on your staircase, yet, if you were to walk those steps with your eyes closed, you'd know exactly when you've reached the top. So, what would you do if you knew you'd reached the top, and then suddenly, there was one more step? Just one. You'd probably brush it off, count it as an error. What if you were 2 off? Then 3? At what point would you realize something was wrong? Which step? My grandmother was a first-generation Chinese immigrant to the United States. Grandma always said I looked like my mom when she was my age, no matter what age I was. I always looked like mom apparently. Grandma died last year. She did well enough for herself, but my mom did even better, especially as a single parent raising my brother and me. She bought this house, a 1-story space with a basement, perfect for the 4 of us. Grandma always watched us while my mom was at work. Grandma almost exclusively spoke Chinese. I was a bit of a brat. Once I realized that everyone at school only spoke English, I had little interest in keeping up my Mandarin. As a result, Grandma and I didn't always talk much. But I still remember her stories. Yi Xian, the Magic Lotus Lantern, Sun Wukong, and the Journey to the West, that one was particularly close to Grandma. I wondered if she ever wanted to return to China like the Monkey King. It was nice to be able to put Mandarin on a resume. Although, it may seem antithetical considering my degree is in English literature. I was the first in my family to graduate college at the ripe old age of 22. Upon graduating, I wanted nothing more than a break, so I moved back in with my mom and my brother. But now it seemed my break was going to be longer than I intended. There was less to do with an English degree than I anticipated. I was sending my resume and credentials left and right. I guess nobody wanted a little Asian Shakespearean even frying their chicken. One night, I considered putting Smith as my last name on my resume, just as a little experiment. I was in the basement, watching a movie while emailing job applications on my laptop. I sent in my last round of credentials and checked the time, 1:02 a.m. I closed my laptop, tossing it gently on the couch cushion next to me. I reached to grab my phone off the charger. Turning its face to me, I found it was dead. I had forgotten the charger downstairs was broken. No sweat, I thought, I'll just sleep in my room tonight and charge it there. I turned off the TV. It was pitch black. Of course, I had navigated this basement thousands of times. Like clockwork, I made my way around the couch, down the short hall, up the 4 stairs to the landing, then turned left to go up the stairs past the landing. It was claustrophobic on the stairs. A wall to the left and right, and a short ceiling above. The distance between the walls was only 2/3 of my wingspan. There was one wooden handrail on the right side. I placed my right hand along the smooth wood and my left hand in my pocket with my phone that bounced with each step. As my hand glided against the rail, I angled it just the right way so that it would slide smoothly off the end of the railing. But to my surprise, the railing didn't end. This gave me pause. I stopped and looked over at the rail. It was too dark to see anything. Standing in place, I kept sliding my hand up, but the end wasn't within my reach. I swear I was sober. I wasn't on anything, I hadn't even ingested anything since dinner. So, I figured I was just more tired than I realized. I kept walking up the stairs. After maybe 5 steps, I had to pause again, scanning the rail with my palm, but still no end. I started to go up the stairs at a faster pace. I heard my heels hit the wood under the carpet. I must have climbed the length of at least 2 of my staircases before I stopped again, catching my breath. Kneeling down on the step ahead, I waved my hands wildly in front of me, searching for the door at the top of the staircase, or the little strip of hardwood floor that slid under that door past the top step. As I looked up, I couldn't even see the outline of light that would have come from upstairs. Where was the moonlight? I pulled out my phone from my pocket. I tried to turn it on. I knew it was dead, but I also knew that the low battery icon would flash if I hit the power button. Once it flashed, I waved the light in front of me, but it barely shined on 3 inches of space ahead. It was no use. I shoved it back into my pocket. I must have been hallucinating. Turning around, I started heading back downstairs, my left hand on the rail. One foot after the other, calmly bouncing downstairs. I knew I'd arrive at the landing eventually. At some point, I realized I must have descended more stairs than I had escalated. I paused and my breathing started to slowly spiral. I tried to get a grip on myself. But it was at this point I moved beyond rational thought. I clutched the handrail, worried it would disappear if I let go. At the same time, I wondered, maybe if I let go of the handrail, then I'd find the end of the stairs. I had to force myself to unhand it, but I did, and I went back up the stairs, my hands clenched into fists in my pockets. Walking and walking and walking, I was confident that each step would be the one to finally take me to the door out of there. I had to stop and take a deep breath. I turned and started jogging the other way. My calves were lightly burning. I figured if I was hallucinating this, I must have looked like a real idiot, running up and down the same 10 steps over and over. Eventually, I had to stop going down. It felt like I was hyperventilating. My knuckles must have been white in my pockets. A thought came to me. If I was close to the bottom of the stairs, then I could toss my phone in front of me. It would hit the wall at the landing. Surely the sound would wake me from this stupor. Taking my phone out of my pocket, my hand shook with nerves at my plan. I hit the power button so the low battery icon would flash again. Cocking my arm backward, I gave a swift toss. The screen was almost immediately enveloped in the darkness, and rather than hearing the phone bump into a wall, the sound rang rhythmically of the phone hitting step, then step, then step, then step until that sound too evaporated into the darkness. It sounded like it was still falling by the time I couldn't hear it anymore. My eyes were wide open, yet I still couldn't see a thing. After standing frozen for what must have been a full minute, I sat on the step behind me and brought my knees to my chest. My mind ran rampant with what to do next. Sleep? There was no way I could with my heart beating this fast. Try to make a hole in the wall? If this was just a hallucination, Mom certainly would not be happy about that in the morning. Try falling down the stairs? Possibly. Before I was able to even keep thinking, I began hearing what sounded like whispers. Most of it I couldn't quite make out. I wondered if it was another language. I thought I made out some words: trip, fall, weak, useless. Suddenly, among the voices, I heard my name, May. I thought it was impossible for my heart to beat any faster, but I was wrong. I felt like it was about to beat up and out of my mouth. Some of the whispers sounded like laughs. Among the whispers came another voice, a very clear sentence in a language I understood too well: "Why don't you try going up the stairs again?" I stood up with a start and thought I heard something behind me. I turned quickly. For a moment, I thought I could see the figure of a man on a step above me. I nearly fell backward. But the outline disappeared almost as soon as I saw it. My mind must have been playing tricks on me in the dark. Despite being in the dark for what felt like minutes, my eyes simply would not adjust. It was still pure blackness. I reached out and the railing was still there, but that provided minimal comfort. I used my other hand to swipe in front of me, just to be sure there truly wasn't anything there. The words of my grandmother came to my mind as I stood petrified. She told us the story of the Gui de Chang. The name roughly translated to ghosts building walls. It's a phenomenon where all seems normal to a wanderer, but slowly, the wanderer starts to circle back to where they started, and nothing can stop them from doing so repeatedly. It's as if a ghost is building walls to keep the wanderer in a single space. As a kid, I always wondered, why would the Gui de Chang do something like that to a poor wanderer? As I got older, the answer became clearer and clearer to me. When given the power, resources, and opportunity to torture someone, any creature will. I tried to remember everything Grandma had ever said about the Gui de Chang. Don't look over your shoulder. It was too late for that. I had turned around multiple times at this point. Look between your legs. The space is a window into the demon's world. I honestly considered this, but I was far too afraid of what I might see if I went through with it. What happened if I never got off these stairs? Would my mom and brother find my corpse here on these steps? Did I even still exist? Or had I vanished from my own dimension? Would I ever see my friends or family again? Hear them again? Touch them again? Ultimately, I decided I would slide down the stairs. I thought about falling down, but I figured I'd break a bone, if not die. I could get on my back and slide down as if it were a water slide. It would be uncomfortable, but eventually, I would hit the landing, right? I assumed the position, crossing my arms as I lay down on the steps. I took a deep breath, ready to send myself down. But just as I was about to shove off, I heard something. Lurching. It hit the left wall, then the right. Soon, I could hear it breathing. It was heavy, heavy breathing. Whatever it was much bigger than me. A bear? No, it must have been bigger. I could hear it coming up the steps. It was definitely walking on two legs, despite how heavy it sounded. As it took its steps, I heard something else, clanking, the clanking of metal, like armor. Or chains. I slowly sat up as the footsteps continued. At a rhythmic pace, the footsteps started getting faster. I slowly and clumsily scrambled to my feet, and I started sprinting up the stairs. I was running and running and running. I could feel my hair blowing behind me. The steps behind me kept getting faster in their own time. I didn't know how long I was running, but I was sweating and wheezing, and my muscles were on fire. Eventually, I started scrambling on all fours up the stairs like some kind of ape. I collapsed on the steps. I clutched the carpeted stairs between my fingers as I sobbed, not ready to face the hands and teeth of whatever was pursuing me. In an instant, past the sobs, I heard the words in a whisper, inside out. And I remembered my grandmother's words. When trapped by a gui de chang, you turn your clothes inside out. As the breathing down the steps grew even heavier, I frantically dragged my shirt off my body, turned it inside out, and pulled it back on. I closed my eyes tightly. The footsteps sounded like cannon fire before stopping right next to me, and the creature's breath glossed over my cheek. Through my eyelids, black turned to red. The breathing on my face disappeared. My own breathing was normal again. The cheeks that were a moment ago tear-stained were now dry. My muscles felt relaxed. There was no trace of sweat on my forehead. I opened my eyes slowly. I saw the banister on the wall across from the one I leaned against. I looked up and to my left. There my brother stood at the open door atop the stairs, hand on the light switch, groggily asking, "Are you okay?" I foolishly looked back down where I saw my phone laying in the center of the landing. But I didn't go back for it. I ran up just 5 steps and hugged my little brother around his neck. He was surprised. "What time is it?" I begged to know. He showed me his watch, which read 1:03 a.m. Just 1 minute after I'd left the couch. I scurried to my room. Though I was unsettled, I felt exhausted, and I managed to get to sleep quickly. The next morning, I turned on all the lights in the house and grabbed a little flashlight out of the hallway closet just to be safe. I ran downstairs, snatched my phone and laptop, then ran back up. I didn't hang out in the basement so much after that. I sat at the kitchen table waiting for my bread in the toaster. I opened my laptop. There was a new email from an employer. Before I got the chance to open it, my brother came in and sat across from me, preparing some cereal. I suddenly became curious and asked him, "Why did you come to the basement door last night anyway?" Something woke me up. For a few minutes, I heard really loud stomping coming from the stairs. "Danny!" Martin screamed into the vacant abyss of the woods as he searched for the missing schoolboy. "Danny! Where are you?" He heard nothing back, only the eerie sound of the wind blowing the fallen leaves and tree branches around him. Martin listened carefully. He was almost sure the woods were speaking to him through the wind, as though they were trying to tell him something. He worked his way through the woods. It was still daylight, but not for much longer. At 4 p.m. dusk was not far off. Eventually, though, he found a clearing. There in the middle was Hindleap Warren's famous witch's tree, a monstrous gigantic beech tree that bore the face of a witch somewhere on it, hence its nickname. Martin looked up in awe from the edge of the clearing at its numerous wriggling branches entwining with each other up into the sky. After a moment, Martin's vision was drawn closer to the base of the tree, and standing in front of it perfectly still, an 11-year-old boy in a red coat and uncombed brown hair. "Danny. Danny," he called over to the kid, walking behind him. No response. No movement either. Strange. "Danny, you wandered away from your group. They're worried about you, mate. Best get back before they call your parents." Martin looked up and saw what Danny was looking at. He had found what many had interpreted as the face of the witch on the side of the tree, staring down at them both, with an angry expression. Some of the teachers and staff had been winding the children up by telling them there really was a witch trapped inside and that the tree was magic. Now seeing the huge tree for the first time, Martin wondered what he would have made of it had he now been looking at it with children's eyes. "But she was calling me," Danny responded softly. "Who?" "Karen, Miss Wilson?" asked Martin, thinking Danny was referring to fellow teacher Karen Wilson. "She's been calling your name for a while, Danny. A lot of people have." "No. Not Miss Wilson," Danny replied, still facing away from Martin. He lifted up his arm and pointed up at the tree. "Her." Martin looked up. Danny was pointing at the face of the witch. Martin felt his stomach drop slightly. A moment ago the expression of Witch's face in the tree had been one of anger, but now it appeared as though she was smiling. Regardless, he assumed he'd interpreted it wrong and dismissed it. "Time to go, Danny," Martin said, laying a gentle hand on the kid's shoulder and giving his shoulder a squeeze. Danny finally turned around, facing Martin with his freckles and glasses and bangs draping over his forehead. "It's time to go, all right," he replied in an unusually slow and deep voice that made Martin nervous. "But I'm not going with you," Danny added. Before Martin could think of a response, a white flash interrupted his vision and a bang went off in his head, almost like he'd been struck with something. He fell backwards and landed on his back in the dirt. He got up immediately, dazed and confused, almost feeling like he'd been asleep. He looked ahead and Danny was gone. He couldn't see where he'd gone either, he'd just vanished. Looking around, something caught his vision on the tree, quite high up. When he realized what it was, he screamed. Karen had been frantically leading the search party for Danny most of the afternoon. A couple of kids from her class had volunteered to help, Samantha and Gary, as they looked through the woods, searching under and amongst numerous bushes. Her heart was racing. She'd never lost a kid on a school trip before. While that was scary enough, there was something about the woods that was making her more anxious and nervous than she already was. Like something in the woods was alive. She wondered if Martin agreed, wherever he was. Out of the blue, Gary said something that startled Karen. "He's probably gone to her." "Who, hun?" asked Karen, thinking he may have been referring to one of the other teachers or students. "He didn't say. But he said she was calling out to him from the woods." That alarmed Karen. "What are you talking about?" she asked, facing him now. "When we were on the treasure hunt. He said she was calling out to him. She wanted him to come and find her. She said he would be in danger if he didn't. Then he was gone." Both Samantha and Gary were looking at her now. Karen, now filled with dread over the idea that someone dangerous had ventured into the woods and lured one of their children away, fixed her eyes on Samantha, who seemed to know what Gary is talking about. "Do you have any idea who he might have been talking about?" Samantha shook her head. "I know where he might have gone though. The witch's tree." Martin looked up horrified and scrambled backwards in the dirt. His legs had turned to jelly though, so getting to his feet was proving difficult. It didn't look real. But it was. He couldn't understand it. But there was no other way to explain it. The face of the witch was still there in the wood of the tree. But next to it now was a new face. One that hadn't been there before. The face appeared to be that of a boy. Wearing glasses, bangs over his forehead and freckles across his cheeks. As though someone had engraved it with a knife onto the tree. It was there, looking frightened, next to the face of the witch, who was now looking angry again. Martin had just about managed to get to his feet when he heard a voice. He swung around, looking in every direction. "Who's there?" he cried. The dusk that was settling onto the woods now had reduced the light in every direction. Darkness was now creeping in around him, but he couldn't see anyone anywhere. When the voice spoke again, he realized where the voice was coming from. It was inside his head. "You won't get him," the voice hissed angrily. A woman's voice. An older woman. "You won't ever get him." Martin turned around slowly. He didn't want to believe what was happening. He turned to face the tree. The two faces were still there high up. The face of the boy. Danny's face. And then the other face. The witch. But there was a difference now. The eyes of the witch's face were glowing red. Martin froze. A noise, somewhere amongst the leaves of the huge tree, came above him. Martin looked up and saw a branch. But the branch was moving towards him, as though the branch had come to life and turned into a long dangling arm. Martin screamed and tried to run, but before he could get to any kind of safe distance, the branch closed around him and pulled him upwards. Karen heard the screams and charged in the direction of the tree. Branches big and small grazed her as she bolted through towards the clearing where the huge beech tree they called the witch's tree stood. As she finally emerged into the clearing, the screaming stopped. She looked around frantically and saw someone she recognized standing there by the tree. She ran towards them and embraced them. Danny. As she did so, her phone rang. It was the head of year Patricia who had stayed behind to call the police. "Pat. I have him. I've found Danny. He's okay." "Oh. You have. Thank God. That's brilliant. He's not been hurt at all?" Karen pulled the phone slightly away from her head. "You're not hurt, are you, Danny?" She didn't think he looked hurt, but thought she'd check anyway. He shook his head. "No, he's fine." Good, Patricia said, followed by a long pause before she spoke again. "Listen, Karen, is Martin with you?" Startled by the change of focus to Martin, Karen replied, "No, he isn't." "Why?" Another long pause. "It's just, we have the police here, and as it happens, they're looking for Martin too, and they want to speak to him. They've found some concerning images on his laptop." Karen's stomach tightened. "Really? What kind of images?" "Images of children, including some pictures of Danny walking home after school. They really want to speak to him." "Do you know where he is?" Karen felt sick and felt herself pulling Danny slightly towards her with her arm out of instinct. "I don't know." Does Danny know where Martin is? Was he maybe with Martin while he was missing?" "I'll ask him," Karen said. "We're coming back to the lodge now. I'll talk to him on the way. See you in a bit." She put the phone back in her pocket and knelt down to Danny's line of sight. "Danny, have you seen Mr. Collins?" she asked, using the name the children would have addressed him as. Danny at first looked up over her shoulder at something high up in the tree, but quickly looked back at Karen before answering. "No," he lied. "I haven't seen him at all. I don't know where he is. I just got lost." Karen smiled at him. "Okay. Not to worry. Come on, let's get back. You've worried a lot of people." As Karen took Danny's hand and led him away, he looked back at the witch's tree. He saw the face of the witch in the tree staring at him, smiling now. And next to the witch's face was another face. Martin's face, engraved in the wood of the tree. His mouth wide open as if he were screaming. At that point, Danny heard the witch's voice one final time in his head. "It's okay, Danny." As Karen took Danny's hand and led him away, he looked back at the witch's tree. He saw the face of the witch in the tree staring at him, smiling now. And next to the witch's face was another face. Martin's face, engraved in the wood of the tree. His mouth wide open as if he were screaming. At that point, Danny heard the witch's voice one final time in his head. "It's okay, Danny, he won't hurt you. You're safe now." I can't take it anymore. I need help. I've tried everything I can think of, but the nightmare just keeps getting worse. I'm a college freshman, and I moved into my dorm, Anderson Hall, about a month ago. The moment I stepped into the building, I knew something was off. The air was heavy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Even the faded wallpaper and the creaky wooden floors added to the eerie atmosphere. It didn't take long for me to learn about the dark history of this dormitory. 2 students had mysteriously vanished over the past few years, with no trace of them ever found. The rumors were that their spirits still haunted the halls. One night, as I sat with my roommate, Tom, I hesitantly brought up the topic. "Hey, have you heard any strange stories about this dorm?" I asked. Tom put down the book he was reading. "Yeah, I've heard some things," he replied. 2 students vanished without a trace. Some say their spirits are still here. They say you can hear whispers in the hallway late at night. And then I started sleepwalking. I'd wake up in strange places, disoriented and scared. The first time it happened, I woke up in the library, surrounded by books on the occult. What scared me the most were the chilling messages written on my arm in what looked like dried blood. The first message read, "Help me." I decided to share my experiences in Facebook, desperate for answers. I shared the history of the dormitory, the whispers in the hallway, and the details of my sleepwalking episodes. My posts started to gain traction, and the people offered theories and advice. The messages on my arm continued, each more disturbing than the last. "They're watching," and "You're next." I knew I had to do something, so I decided to investigate the dormitory's past with the help of a few friends. As we searched through old records, my friend, Sarah, exclaimed, "Look at this. The missing students lived in the same room as you." "And it doesn't stop there," added another friend, Mark. "There's a pattern of strange deaths and disappearances in this dormitory dating back decades." One student even claimed to have seen a shadowy figure roaming the halls. With each new revelation, my sleepwalking became more frequent and more dangerous. One night, I woke up in the basement, surrounded by lit candles and strange symbols on the floor. I knew I didn't have much time. My posts had caught the attention of a paranormal investigator named Alice. She reached out to me via private message and offered to help me break the dormitory's curse. "We have to act fast," she warned. "Your life might be at stake." Together, we uncovered the sinister truth. The building itself was built on the site of an ancient burial ground. The spirits trapped within the building were using me as a vessel to try to escape their eternal torment. Alice explained the situation to me. "You see, the spirits are drawn to you because you're sensitive to their presence. They're using your sleepwalking to try and break free from this place." We performed a ritual to cleanse the dormitory and free the spirits. The ceremony was intense, with incense burning and ancient chants echoing through the halls. I could feel the darkness lifting as the trapped souls were released. It's been a week since the ritual, and I haven't sleepwalked since. The dormitory feels lighter, and the nightmares have stopped. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed at night, I can't help but wonder if all the spirits have truly left the dormitory or if some still linger, waiting for their chance to return. I occasionally hear faint whispers in the hallway, but I'm not sure if it's just my imagination playing tricks on me.